Brad Stevens talks offseason injuries to Tatum and Brown and Joe Mazzulla. It's all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Yup. Beantown, be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Back to back, if I say it, it's stamped. Locked on number 19, the best one, the next one. Juice loose in your pool now for the next run. It's the C's, who else could it be? What they gon' say now? Screaming like JT, Karalis, recap the madness. Every game, every practice. Best daily pod, no cap like Brad Beckett. Clutch like Drew to KP, tap in daily. Primetime jabbing D White on the sideline. Raining Jace, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And I got you covered every Monday through Friday on every podcasting app, wherever you want to listen, however you want to listen. Watch a show on YouTube, all of that stuff. The show is free. It's available everywhere. And let's just have some fun together. I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've been covering the Celtics for about 20 years. And I've written a couple of books. So I'm around the team. I've been around the team. And today I was around the team when Brad Stevens talked. So we're going to be sharing a lot. Later on, we'll hear Brad Stevens on Joe Mazzulla. In the second segment, we'll get into the injuries, Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown. I want to start with the offseason stuff. So let's set this up. First of all, you'll hear my questions in there sometimes. My voice, for people who didn't hear me yesterday, I'm a little under the weather. I actually like my sick voice better than my actual voice. I need to train my normal voice to be more like my sick voice. I feel like I'm hosting a slow jam show. So I apologize for the voice, and I apologize that this voice is going to go away because I like this so much better. But thank you. Again, I want to shout out my everydayers, people who are here with me Monday through Friday, new listeners, all of that. Thank you so much for checking this out. I was there at the practice facility at the Auerbach Center for Brad Stevens. He kind of ducked most of the offseason, what's coming up next type of questions. He made an opening statement saying, I got to meet with the primary stakeholders, and, you know, we're going to go over what priorities and all of that stuff. And, you know, we'll talk more around draft night. So he was a little kind of not forthcoming on that, but he did get to a few questions. So here's what he had to say. I'll for all of these segments, you'll hear Joe Mazzulla. I'll react to it afterwards.
Listen, we've been talking about this for years, right? I mean, the CBA has been well known for years, and so there are penalties associated with being at certain levels, and we know that. And you just weigh that. You weigh where we are, you weigh everything else, and then you make those decisions. But those are, you know, you have to have the clarity of a full season and a full playoffs, and like I said, a couple of good nights sleep, and everybody gets in a room and put your heads together and figure out what's next.
Brad, how much did Jayson's injury, how much does that impact what you are about to embark on this summer?
I mean, I think anytime you're talking about an injury like that, I think it's another piece of information that you have to ingest and figure out how that affects you moving forward, both next year and in the future.
And with the collective bargaining agreement, we all talk about second apron and blah, blah, blah. But what about the other end where teams that normally had cap space, where you would normally be able to say, hey, you know, salary dumps, those don't exist the way they used to anymore. How much does the lack of that kind of trading partner impact what kind of moves that you have to make?
Again, we'll talk about all that stuff at draft. You know, I'll have a better idea about all that stuff. But I would say that we have a bunch of really good players, and they're you know, obviously under contract, and we want to first look at everything that we have here and, again, try to be the best version of ourselves here.
Brad, you guys have made the playoffs every year since 15 and been 7 or 8 Eastern Conference Finals. With your ego, in terms of you want to build a championship contender every year, but is there something that says with the new CBA, with all the restrictions, with Jayson's injury, like we have to take a step back? Like there could be, like, are you in the brass were you kind of pointing to like eventually we're going to have to take a step back? Eventually, like how does that go when you want to tell Boston that they're going to have a championship contender every year, but that might not be sustainable.
Yeah, and I think the way that you say it is the North Star is to have a championship contender, right? And so you have to you have to do what's best to give yourself the best opportunity to do that when you can do that. And so we just have to look at it all and decide, how feasible that is on any given year, and then, make sure that we are, we're making the decisions accordingly. But the reality is like I said, we have a lot of good players. We're in a unique situation. They're all under contract. And obviously, as you pointed out, there are, several basketball penalties that will come with that amount of salary. And so we just have to weigh it all and make those decisions. And again, I'll have more clarity after we meet and talk and go through it.
I feel like there's obviously there's a lot of deflection. That's Brad Stevens, right? He's going to deflect a lot of that stuff. The meeting that's going to happen, you can't tell me that the meeting hasn't happened already. You can't tell me that these guys, that Brad is sitting here still waiting to figure out what the parameters are under which he's working, that we aren't at least having some discussions about under the tax, under the second apron, for like what's the goal? Although it's possible, but the Jayson, that was me asking the question. The Jayson injury does change some of what they do. It is a piece of information, as he said. They're going to have to work with that. As I said in yesterday's podcast, I think there are going to be a couple of things that tell you whether he's coming back or not, or what's more likely than not. I think Al Horford returning instead of retiring might be an indicator that Jayson is coming back. I think keeping Derek White might be an indicator that Jayson is coming back. I'll get to the Jayson quotes in the next segment, but I remain optimistic about Tatum. And so there is a possibility that the moves that will be made are with the title contention in mind, that there may be a more full roster that you run with this upcoming season than you might think after a star player has an Achilles injury. But I'll dive into this as this podcast continues. Again, 5 days a week. We're moving heavily now into the off season. There is a lot of work to do. I don't think people realize exactly how much there is and how much might change, because there aren't a lot of trade partners, as I put into that question. And I shouldn't have said salary dumps, but that's what we're looking at, right? We're looking at potential salary dumps where there aren't many trade partners. Maybe Brooklyn, maybe a couple of other teams. They're not going to be able to take, like, maybe not Drew Holiday, maybe not Kristaps Porzingis. You're going to have to take players back and get creative. But they're in such a financial bind that if the first move that they do is trading Sam Hauser for nothing, and that's $10 million, they could save somewhere around $85 million in taxes just by trading him for nothing, because their tax rate is up over $8 per dollar that they're, that tax bracket that they're in. So there's a lot of money that they can save just by making some of these moves that they're going to have to save. Getting under the second apron is a priority, no doubt. Whatever the meeting, what's going to come out of it is, you got to get under that second apron, and you got to get under it to a point where it's not just under, it's under with enough room to take back extra salary, you can start doing a little unbalanced trade. You can start aggregating and stuff. But if you aggregate a trade, if you send out 2 players to get one back, you're now hard capped at the second apron. So you need some flexibility there. All of this is to say this could get messy this offseason. I even throughout the season did not realize the extent of how bad this was. It could be bad. It could be bad. And I know I say that as like, now, what do you mean bad? I don't know. Well, we're starting with Holiday. We're starting with Porzingis. We're talking about Sam Hauser. Is that enough? Is it? Or is there more? Do you have to do more? How do you manage and get under that second apron and then eventually get under the tax? The Celtics at some point here are going to have to get under the tax. Maybe it's not next year, but soon they're going to have to get under the tax because the tax line is insane. They're a repeater team, and the lowest tax they're going to pay is $3 per dollar over. So it is a lot. It is a lot. All right. Up next, Brad talks about Jayson and Jaylen and their injuries. We'll hear that when I come back. Today's show is brought to you by Car Gurus. Shopping for a car should be exciting, not exhausting. But between the confusing prices, the hidden fees, I've got to go talk to my manager, and the little game that they like to play, trust me, I've been in there. I hate it. It can feel overwhelming. That's why you have to use Car Gurus. They help you cut through the noise and show you the best deals with full confidence. With over 4 million listings, Car Gurus now has more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the United States. They verify dealers, provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice without second guessing yourself. So if you need a deal you can trust, Car Gurus makes it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. Their price drops alert are an awesome feature. You know exactly when the perfect car is available for your budget, and in-depth vehicle details give you peace of mind. It's no wonder SimilarWeb estimated traffic data shows Car Gurus is the #1 most visited car shopping site. Buy or sell your car today at cargurus.com. Go to cargurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That's cargurus.com. cargurus.com. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On NBA, Locked On NBA Game Night. They're both on the same feed. Locked On NBA Game Night's covering the playoff games, so we're very in-depth on games, on nights where there are no games, because there might be some nights where there are no games. There'll be previews. Very in-depth stuff. The Locked On NBA podcast covers all the big stories and the big storylines. So check that out, all in the same feed. We'll get more into the offseason as the podcast progresses. Let me tell you, a ton of offseason stuff coming up here. I do have some theories about why we're waiting till draft night. Maybe Brad is looking to get some stuff done before the calendar switches to the next business year. That could be a way to circumvent some things. I'll have guests on to break all that stuff down. For now, we want to get to the injuries because he addressed the Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown injuries. Let's start with his thoughts on Jayson Tatum's injury.
You know, obviously that's hard, super hard for Jayson. I mean, more than anybody, as has been well documented, he loves to play. You know, and I think even missing 2 games has been, you know, grueling for him. And so we know that there's a long road ahead, and that there's going to be several steps that he'll have to take before he ultimately gets back out on the court. But the positive was we were 15 minutes away from, you know, Dr. O'Malley, who is a terrific surgeon who has done a number of these. And Dr. Shenna was on the phone with him before we left the building on Monday night. And he was out of the MRI in consultation and done with surgery by the time we had an injury report the next day, because of there was real benefit to doing it early. And so it was as tough as that injury is and as tough as it was that night, just an amazing set of circumstances and an amazing thank you from our organization to, all of the, Dr. O'Malley, the nurses at HSS and everybody there, and the hotel that we were staying in and the accommodations they made Jayson feel comfortable in. And just I thought it was about as good of a transition and about a bleak, of a feeling, as you could have.
This is why I'm so optimistic about Jayson's injury. That right there, it happens. The team doctor's on the phone with the surgeon before they even leave the arena. He goes to that hospital the next day, the next morning. They're operating. It's done. We're all sitting here on Twitter going, oh, I wonder what's taking so long. Is Joe Mazzulla, playing some games? Maybe it's something else. And he's like in recovery from surgery. Getting it done quickly is important. Getting it done from one of the best in the business, important. Getting it done in an innovative way that sort of reinforces the injury rather than just sutures the two ends back together. All of that stuff plays into my optimism. Now, I may be wrong. Lord knows I've been wrong a couple of times here and there, maybe. But the age, 27 years old, the fitness, the circumstances that Brad just laid out, all of that stuff makes me feel really, really good about Tatum's recovery. Even if it's not that he's back at at some point during the season, I feel good about him getting back to his normal self. I just think if he's not 100% of what he used to be, 97, 98%, 96%, 95%, whatever it is, I think it'll be close. So I remain optimistic, and what Brad said reinforces that to me. Now, he also addressed Jaylen Brown's torn meniscus.
What was reported this weekend, that's been something that's he's had for a while, and it's been stable. And he's played with it. And so that's been several scans through and through. So we've known that for a long time, and he's known that for a long time. And, but it just tells you these guys they care. They care about winning. They care about playing well. And, again, I think that'll probably, he'll drive that. But certainly, we're thankful for how much and how hard he's played, but he was definitely experiencing some discomfort there in March. But you guys all watched it in the last couple of weeks. I thought it got better and better and better, and I think he actually felt better. At least he told me he felt better at the end of the next series.
So my first reaction there is, it's so funny that the team knew that he had a torn meniscus for a while. The knee stuff goes back to February? That the torn meniscus never really showed up on the injury report, did it? I saw impingement. Is that what that is? Is that accurate? And if he's had it, and he had it all throughout the playoffs, I don't know how a team gets away with not reporting that in the gambling era. If I was a bettor, I'd be, pretty pissed that the Celtics got away with not reporting a torn meniscus throughout, months of the season. So kind of curious to see if anything comes out of that. Maybe not, but curious. But credit to Jaylen Brown for playing through it. This is what you want, right? You want a guy to play through some of that stuff. I guess resting it, this explains why resting it didn't really do much. What I sat here for many days saying, just sit out and rest. I didn't know it was a torn meniscus. So the rest wouldn't have done anything. That doesn't heal right away. It's a meniscus. It's just either you reattach it or you don't, or you leave it alone and you deal with it. And some people don't get surgery on the meniscus. Some people don't get anything done. They just deal with it and it's fine. So I don't know what the Celtics are going to do, but that's what Brad said, that Jaylen's going to drive this. So we'll see what comes out of that. But that's the update there. I just, he played that long on a torn meniscus. That's crazy. But that's some Warrior stuff, man. That's some Warrior stuff. That's something that, nowadays in 2025, we're like, oh man, that was so stupid. I'm sure some people say that. In 30 years ago, 40 years ago, in back when I was coming up, people that would like, they'd lionize you. You'd be like, oh man, that dude, tough as nails, man. He played through a torn meniscus, toughest SOB out there, man. Like that would be the reaction. Now, I don't know if that's the full reaction out there. I hope it is, because that's, what more do you want? The guy gets paid a ton of money, and he could have easily been like, hey man, torn meniscus, I got too much on the line. I'm not playing with this. I'm going to get the surgery. And if I come back in time, great. But he played through it and, tried to help the team and had some really good moments with that. So, all right. The last bit, and I wanted to do this because there's so many people just getting on Joe Mazzulla, and I don't understand. I do understand, actually. I do understand. But Brad's comments on Joe Mazzulla are coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by Skims. When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was very intrigued. My wife is a big fan of the Skims line for women. And when she found out that Skims was going into the men's category, she's like, yes, you're going to love it. So I took her word for it, and she's right. My wife's always right. Underwear, especially when you're choosing a boxer brief and, you work out, can get a little kind of dicey. You see the guys walking around the gym doing the little kind of like, almost like little dance moves to kind of move things around when the underwear doesn't go where it's supposed to go. I have the 5-inch stretch boxer brief. It moves with me. It doesn't lose its shape. It's great for an active lifestyle, whether I'm working out, going out for walking the dogs, running errands. They're comfortable, reliable. Lightweight material is amazing. It feels like you're wearing nothing at all. So I would recommend the 5-inch boxer briefs. I think they're great. Skims gave me a couple, and they are very, very heavy in my rotation. I got to get myself some more because they're super, super comfortable. So check it out. But they have like a 3-inch boxer brief. They have a stretch 3-inch boxer brief. They got cotton briefs. They got a ton of different. So whatever your style, whatever your feel, check it out at skims.com. Skims.com/LockedOnNBA, or go to Skims stores. Let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Skims is the official underwear partner of the NBA, WNBA, and USA Basketball. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. We got a Locked On for every NBA team, Major League Baseball team, NFL team, NHL team. Whatever your favorite team is, go check out a Locked On podcast. It exists for you. So I wanted to include Brad Stevens' thoughts on Joe Mazzulla. It was asked in context with other coaches in the league who had been fired. So you hear him talk about Taylor Jenkins from Memphis and Michael Malone in Denver. So I'll just play it and then we'll react after.
Yeah, Joe's great. Joe's done a great job. I don't think anyone in coaching ever thought it was certain. So I think uncertainty is what you sign up for in some ways. But listen, there's so many things that go into winning and losing. And, coaching's part of it, right? But, playing, circumstances, injuries, whatever the case may be, there's so many things. And So that's why I think it's so important to I know how hard their jobs are, and I've felt for Taylor and for Mike, and obviously talked to both of them. And but every year, good coaches get let go, and they're way better than everybody talks about them. I'm just telling you because I coached against them. They're way better than everybody thinks or knows. So, but that's the reality of our situation because that's the way the world works. And there's other coaches that are really good too that'll get their opportunities. And but yeah, we're lucky that we have Joe here. We're lucky that we have the staff we have here, and we're thankful.
So anybody who was listening or watching that thinks maybe Joe will go, I don't think so. Joe's a good basketball coach. Joe knows what he's doing. And you hear things that he says, people think that's what he is in the locker room. I'm telling you, Joe Mazzulla that's in the locker room is not the guy that's at the podium. He's not the guy that's in the scrums with the media. I can tell you he has a different outlook. He's not going to bash his team in the media. He conducts himself a certain way. The people who complain about the 3-pointers, I've seen people, and I heard some, typical sports talk radio crap in Boston. Whenever they talk about the Celtics, I should be thankful. I am actually thankful because whenever sports talk radio decides to talk about the Celtics, they get it so wrong so often. They are so off base that I really should be sending them flowers for making my podcast, thrive the way it is, because people need some place to go for people who, where somebody actually knows what the hell they're talking about. And this notion of why will they just take nothing but 3-pointers? The Celtics took 63 pointers in game 1 against the Knicks. And even with that, they averaged 46 3-pointers per game in that series. Without that first game, they averaged somewhere around 43, which is basically normal for the modern NBA. That's modern NBA. I'm sorry. Drive, kick, shoot that 3. That's what the league is right now. And if you're doing it right, it works great. The Celtics won a championship last year with it. They won 60 games this year with it. They fell apart against the Knicks. No doubt about that. They botched the 2 games 1 and 2. No doubt about that. Game 1, absolutely too many 3-pointers. That happens sometimes. But this notion that all the Celtics do is come down and jack 3s. It's funny. We just had that Orlando series. And people will ignore facts. This is just a common modern, just in life, every day. People will ignore facts to yell about things that they believe, even if those things that they believe are not true. They will ignore the fact that the Celtics averaged 37 3-pointers a game against Orlando and had to beat Orlando by going to the rim and getting to the line, and they did that. They do not just come down and shoot 3s. And I thought maybe after that Orlando series that people would be like, okay, I get it now. But they don't. They just don't. They don't want to. They just hate 3-pointers, and they hate that people take them as much as they do. And every once in a while, the Celtics will oblige with an absolute stinker of a game where they over-rely on 3-pointers. Game 1 against the Knicks. They took 60. They missed 45. It was brutal. We know that they didn't play great offense, but that's not like Joe Mazzulla approved. They should not be hunting any one particular shot. They should not be hunting drives or mid-range shots or 3-pointers. They should be playing basketball, and whatever the best shot is available, that's the shot that they take, and that's how Mazzulla ball works. Now, the players don't always do it. The players fall in love with the shot, or the players hunt the shot or settle for the shot. That happens, and Joe has to try to figure things out. And people get mad at him for not doing stuff that high school coaches do or college coaches do. This isn't high school or college. You have to let pros play this stuff out. You have to let them figure it out in a lot of ways. Now, you do call timeouts and you say, okay, we're trying to do this. Come on, guys, let's do this. But the players are going to do what they do out on the floor, and you have to trust them to figure it out. So it blows my mind. Like, is Joe perfect? No. Is he the best coach in the league? No. But he's a really good coach, and they just won a championship last season. People, it boggles my mind how willing people are to just dismiss a championship in this era of rings, championships, or bust. The Celtics got one, and people are like, nah, too easy. That one was too easy. The Celtics won a championship last year. For most teams, it'd be like, okay, Celtics won a championship. Our team won a championship. You get like 3-year grace period from criticism. Celtics, no, next year, boom. And I'm not saying don't criticize these guys, but at least put it in the right place. Like the Joe Mazzulla stuff, it bugs me because if there was valid criticism, if people have a valid criticism of, express it, we'll talk about it. There is some valid criticism. There is. Maybe you should have played Peyton Pritchard some more. Maybe you should have went with Luke Cornett a little bit more earlier in the series. Maybe you should not have started Luke Cornett in Game 6. Not that it really mattered that much, but regardless, there are some lineup things. Maybe there's like you can get better at some of the out of bounds plays. Sure, fine. Maybe he defers a little bit too much to Tatum. Sure, fine. Okay, stuff to work on. But still a good coach he's accomplished a lot in a very short amount of time. And people are like, no, get him out. I'd rather have a guy. I'd have this guy. Well, he has a worse resume than Joe. But for some reason, like Michael Malone in Denver is seen as something, great. He's a great coach. He is a great coach. People look at Denver like those were legitimate champions. Like they didn't beat an 8th seed for their championship. They beat the 8th seed Miami Heat for their championship. But everybody's like, oh, well, those are legit champions. What happened to their easy path? Because they're in the West. And then they didn't win next year. And then this year they get bounced in the second round. So it's the same thing. And they've got Jokic. So it just bugs me because it's people who just it feels like an agenda. You just don't like Joe. You don't like the things that he says. You don't like the 3-point style of play, and that's it. But the Celtics are not as egregious as people might make it seem to be. All right, that's it. Let's continue this conversation tomorrow. We'll do more off-season stuff. We'll do a mailbag this week. So johnkaralis.com/mailbag, johnkaralis.com/mailbag to submit your questions. Get those in. I'll do a mailbag and all of that. I would love to have you in the comment section on the YouTube page. That's a great place to congregate with your fellow Celtics fans. And then I would love it if you shared the podcast and told everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.